The observation deck of the Galactic Council station hummed with anxious energy as dozens of species gathered to witness what they believed would be humanity's final lesson in humility. On the screens before them, Sergeant Lyra Kane stood alone, in a containment arena surrounded by 8 Vacrian predator cubs, creatures whose instincts were honed for violence from the moment they drew breath. "The human is already dead," Ambassador Vorath announced, his crystalline form refracting the harsh arena lights. "She simply does not know it yet." The Vacrian cubs circled Kane slowly, their obsidian scales gleaming under the artificial sun. Each cub stood nearly 4 feet tall despite being only weeks old, their razor-sharp claws leaving deep grooves in the reinforced flooring. Their eyes, 6 per creature, tracked every movement with predatory precision. Kane didn't reach for her weapon. She didn't call for extraction. Instead, she did something that made the entire council lean forward in confusion. She sat down. "What is the human doing?" Commander Zexthal hissed through his translator. "Is this some kind of surrender ritual?" The largest cub, Tharn, approached first. His muscular frame rippled with barely contained aggression, his throat producing the distinctive clicking sound that preceded a Vacrian attack. The council observers tensed. Several species began recording, eager to document humanity's foolishness for their archives. But Kane remained still, her breathing steady, her eyes locked on Tharn's central pair. She didn't challenge him. She didn't submit. She simply acknowledged him. Tharn's clicking stopped. His head tilted in a motion that confused even the Vacrian representatives in the observation deck. The cub's nostrils flared as he processed Kane's scent. No fear hormones, no aggression markers, just calm determination laced with something the Vacrians had never encountered before. Empathy. "Remarkable," whispered Dr. Seelanth, the station's xenobiologist. "She's not triggering their predatory response, but how?" Kane slowly extended her hand, palm down, fingers relaxed. Tharn approached cautiously, his 6 eyes studying the gesture. In the wild, in the arenas, in every documented encounter, predators read body language before they struck. Tension meant prey. Aggression meant competition. But this confusing absence of both, created a pause in ancient programming. The other cubs watched their leader, their own instincts momentarily suspended by Tharn's hesitation. Kane began to speak, her voice low and rhythmic, not from any translator but from her own throat, sounds she'd spent weeks learning from Vacrian linguistic databases. "Strong ones," she said in their clicking tongue, the words imperfect but unmistakable. "Brave hunters. I see you." Ambassador Vorath's form flickered in shock. "That's impossible. Human vocal cords cannot produce Vacrian maternal calls. The frequency is—" "She's not producing it perfectly," Dr. Seelanth interrupted, adjusting her scanner. "But close enough. She's approximating the sounds a Vacrian mother makes to her cubs after their first successful hunt. She's acknowledging their strength while positioning herself as non-threatening." Tharn's posture shifted. His claws retracted slightly. He moved closer until his snout was inches from Kane's hand, processing this bizarre human who spoke broken Vacrian and showed no fear. Then, in a movement that would be analyzed by xenobiologists, for decades Tharn lowered his head and pressed it against her palm. The observation deck erupted in chaos. "Impossible." Vorath's voice cracked through the translator. "Vacrian cubs don't bond with other species. Their neural pathways are designed for pack hierarchy, not interspecies cooperation." But the other cubs were already moving. One by one they approached Kane, touching her with snouts and claws, not in aggression but in curiosity. Tharn remained closest, his massive form now positioned between Kane and the arena's entrance, the exact position a Vacrian alpha took when protecting vulnerable pack members. Kane slowly stood and the cubs moved with her, maintaining a formation that sent chills through every observer. They weren't circling prey. They were creating a defensive perimeter. "How did she do this?" Commander Zexthal demanded. "What technology is she using? What biological warfare has humanity deployed?" No technology, said Dr. Selenth, her voice filled with wonder. No weapons. She studied them. For weeks, according to her file, she watched footage of Vacrian maternal interactions, learned their sounds, understood their psychology. She didn't see monsters to be defeated. She saw children to be understood. Captain Thoros of the Vacrian delegation stepped forward, his expression unreadable. In 10,000 years of Vacrian history, no outsider has ever earned a cub's protection. Our young are hardwired for aggression, shaped by evolution to trust only pack and to destroy all else. Yet this human. He paused, his translator struggling with the emotion in his voice. This human has done what our own scientists deemed impossible. The arena door opened. Kane was scheduled to be extracted if she survived the first 5 minutes. But as the extraction team entered, Tharn and the other cubs moved instantly into attack formation, not against Kane, but against the new arrivals, perceiving them as threats to the human they'd claimed as pack. Kane quickly raised her hand, speaking again in her imperfect Vacrian. Safe, friends. Stand down, strong ones. The cubs hesitated, then slowly relaxed, though they maintained close proximity to Kane as she walked toward the exit. Tharn pressed against her side, a gesture of possession and protection that made the extraction team freeze in place. Let them accompany her, Captain Thoros ordered, his voice carrying the weight of command. If they've chosen her as pack, separating them now would be cruel. As Kane left the arena with 8 deadly predator cubs forming a protective barrier around her, the Galactic Council fell silent. They had designed this test to prove humanity's arrogance, to show that humans' insistence on diplomacy and understanding was a fatal weakness in a hostile universe. Instead, Sergeant Lyra Kane had demonstrated something far more dangerous: humanity's ability to forge bonds where none should exist, to communicate across seemingly impossible divides, and to transform potential enemies into loyal allies through nothing more than patience, respect, and the radical act of seeing others as individuals, rather than threats. Ambassador Vorath's crystalline form dimmed. Recalculate the threat assessment on humanity, he said quietly. Any species that can turn Vacrian predator cubs into protective guardians through empathy alone is far more dangerous than we anticipated. Not because of their weapons, but because of their influence. Dr. Selenth watched the screens as Kane sat in her quarters, surrounded by cubs who had already begun responding to her voice commands. Not dangerous, she corrected softly. Transformative. And perhaps that's what the galaxy needs most. The weeks that followed, Tharn would never leave Kane's side. The bond formed in that arena would reshape diplomatic relations between humanity and the Vacrian Empire. And the Galactic Council would learn a lesson they should have known from the start. Never underestimate a species whose greatest strength isn't their technology or their weapons, but their stubborn, impossible, beautiful refusal to accept that understanding is ever truly out of reach.